Hi there, sentient beings. First of all, does everybody know that I write books? Cause I get the question often in the comments section. I don't want to single out the guy who just did it a couple of days ago, but they'll say things like, do you know where I can get a good book, or do you know of any good books that introduce you to Dogen? And I'm like, yeah, I wrote 3 of them. Sit Down and Shut Up, Don't Be a Jerk, and It Came from Beyond Zen, or any good books to introduce you to Zen in general. And I wrote another one called Hardcore Zen, and all my books are, there's 8 books out there that you can get by me. So go get them, and there's links to the webpage where you can order them directly and signed and everything. Anyway, yesterday I told you something right, and I told you something wrong. So the thing I told you that was wrong is that I said Dogen never wrote about the Noble Eightfold Path in any sort of detail except as a passing mention. I was wrong about that. But I was right about the fact that it is uncommon for Zen teachers, in the teachers in the Zen tradition, especially the older generation of Zen teachers, the previous generations, to talk about the so-called Hinayana, which is the early Buddhist schools of thought and their doctrines and things. But Dogen did write about this stuff, the Eightfold Path, in this chapter, 37 Elements of Bodhi. And I'll read you Nishijima Roshi's introduction to that, because that kind of explains what I was just saying. There are 2 fundamental schools of Buddhism, Hinayana, small vehicle, and Mahayana, great vehicle. And a lot of people object to using the word Hinayana these days. People of Nishijima Roshi's generation just kind of used it as a technical term, but since it's sort of disparaging to the early schools of Buddhism, nowadays people don't use it quite as much. The 37 methods are usually said to belong to Hinayana Buddhism, because they are discussed in the Abhidharma Mahavibhasa Sastra, which is one of the primary sutras of Hinayana Buddhism. In Japan, and especially among Mahayana Buddhist masters, it was very rare for Buddhist monks to discuss these teachings. But Master Dogen has his own views on Mahayana and Hinayana. According to him, there exists only the Buddhism that Gautama Buddha taught. He thought that any distinctions between Mahayana and Hinayana were reflections of the different ages and cultures in which the 2 schools of Buddhism were taught, and he refused to discriminate between the 2 Buddhist streams. In this chapter, Master Dogen explains the 37 elements of the truth with no division into Hinayana or Mahayana, but based on the practice of Zazen. So, the first fold of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. And I was kind of surprised to find out that what this is in Sanskrit is Samyak Drishti. And if you've ever been in a yoga class, you've probably heard, it's kind of a common thing for yoga instructors to tell you to find your drishti point, because they like to throw in a little bit of Sanskrit here and there. And so drishti means view, so find the place where you're going to look. That's all that means. So view, in the case of Sanskrit and English, can either mean an actual physical place you're looking at, or an opinion or a way of understanding things. And Samyak actually appears in the word Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. So in that case it means perfect or complete. So it could be perfect or complete view, or in Chinese the character that's used is pronounced in Japanese tadashi or sho, and it means right, correct. So it could be either one. In the Dharmapada, the right view is explained thusly. And they have Buddha saying, "And what is right view? Knowledge with regard to suffering, knowledge with regard to the origin of suffering, knowledge with regard to the cessation of suffering, knowledge with regard to the way of practice leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called the right view." And that is, in short, the 4 Noble Truths. So that defines right view as understanding the 4 Noble Truths. But there's another way that wrong view is defined, and let's find it here. It comes from the Buddha's middle-length discourses, and it goes like this. There is the case where an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person does not discern what ideas are fit for attention or what ideas are unfit for attention. This being so, he does not attend to ideas fit for attention, and he attends instead to ideas unfit for attention. This is how he attends inappropriately. So these are the not right views, and the not right views are thinking as follows. Was I in the past? Was I not in the past? What was I in the past? How was I in the past? Having been what was I in the past? Shall I be in the future? Shall I not be in the future? What shall I be in the future? How shall I be in the future? Having been what shall I be in the future? Or else he is inwardly perplexed about the immediate present. Am I? Am I not? What am I? How am I? Where has this being, me, come from? Where is it bound? As he attends inappropriately in this way, one of the 6 mistaken views arises in him. The view that I have a self, or the view that I have no self, or the view that it is precisely by means of self that I perceive self, or the view that it is precisely by means of self that I perceive not self, or the view that it is precisely by means of not self that I perceive self. Or else he has a view like this. This very self of mine, knower that is sensitive here and there to the ripening of good and bad actions, is the self of mine that is constant, everlasting, eternal, not subject to change, and will endure as long as eternity. And this is called the thicket of wrong views that does not free you from suffering. So this is going to get probably confusing and convoluted because this term self here is referring to the older so-called Hindu view of Atman, the all-abiding personal self that is indivisible with liberty and unity and whatever, that just exists forever and ever as an unchanging thing that lives in your body and is the immaterial soul in your material body. However, we are going to see that Dogen and other Buddhist teachers in the Zen tradition, I'm sorry about the beeping, it's just going to go on, use the word self in a different way. Also, they're using a different word. They're not using Atman, they're using a Chinese or Japanese word, which is pronounced in Japanese, Jiko. And that word usually means a kind of a pervasive self that exists throughout the universe, and oh my god, this is confusing, and I'm sorry. So here is what Dogen says, and this is book 4 of Nishijima Cross version of Shobogenzo. It's the first chapter in that book. Here's what Dogen says about right view. Right view as a branch of the path is the inside of the eyes containing the body. At the same time, even prior to the body, we must have the eye that is prior to the body. Though the view has been grandly realized in the past, it is realized now as the real universe, and is experienced immediately. In sum, those who do not put the body into the eyes are not Buddhist ancestors. So yeah, I know, that's really weird. When Dogen uses the word I, he generally means an understanding or a point of view or a way of looking at things. So when he says that the inside of the eyes containing the body, when he says the eyes contain the body, my understanding of that, and take this for what you will, is it's an understanding that the body exists inside of the mind rather than the mind existing inside of the body. Our normal point of view that we've all grown up with is that the mind is something that's up here in our heads, and it's this little organ. The mind is just a kind of a word for the function of this organ inside the body. So inside the body there's this thing that has the function of mind, and it is inside the body and everything else is outside. The Buddhist point of view is that we exist inside of mind. We are part of mind. Mind as a big thing, or self as a big thing, if you really want to go there. And that Dogen is saying that we have to have the view of the body being a thing that exists inside of the mind rather than vice versa. That's a slightly unorthodox way of putting it, but I'm going to stick with it. And Nishijima Roshi, in his footnotes about this phrase, the eye that precedes the body, or the eye that is prior to the body, says, Shinsen no Gen, or the eye that precedes the body, suggests the ability to regulate our physical actions even before we are conscious of them. And the line he is referring to, again, is, at the same time, even prior to the body, we must have the eye that is prior to the body. Hello, Ziggy. I wonder if Ziggy has the eye that is prior to the body. Anyway, he just came running around here. Now, that idea of the, what does he say? I've already forgotten it, because I'm thinking about Ziggy. Suggests the ability to regulate our physical actions even before we are conscious of them. Is, I believe, Nishijima Roshi's way of indicating intuition, because he was very big on this concept of intuition. But we also know from recent studies that a lot of the behaviors and actions that we take to be voluntary are actually things that are initiated before we are consciously aware of them. And so it is this understanding that we don't have quite as much control over what we do as we think we do. We do have a certain sense of free will and a certain ability to act freely, to act as we want to. But I think we all overestimate that, wildly overestimate that, and think that we are our own thing and our own mind and our own body, when actually we just have a kind of a small ability to consciously control things, and most of it is going on unconsciously, and most of it is the operation of big mind or big self that we as a small self have absolutely no control over. This is another thing that Dogen wants us to understand. Now, the part that is translated in this version as though the view has been grandly realized in the past, it is realized now as the real universe and is experienced immediately. That is Nishijima and Cross's translation. The Kazuaki Tanahashi translation is, because it magnificently sees the self in the past, it actualizes the fundamental point. It is what has been immediately seen in the past. And this it, if we're going to phrase it in the Tanahashi way, is the big it. It is the it of the universe, the it that is inmo in it. I'm not sure if it is actually the Japanese word inmo, but it's what it's referring to that. And it experiences the present reality as here and now, and it experiences the past as memory, and there isn't maybe a past that we can go to, but the past is a real thing. We understand that, and there's a phrase that comes up that Nishijima Roshi often translates as the moment before the present, or the moment just before the present, as a real thing. So we are the center of a universe with no center, as Tim McCarthy, my first teacher, put it. And we understand that and act according to that. So the way I take it, Dogen's understanding of right view is, as I said, the understanding that we are part of something bigger, and also the understanding that the intuitive ability, or maybe the workings of the big mind, are more important or more salient or more relevant in our behavior and action than the small mind. But then again, we've been talking about ethics, and we're going to be talking about ethics a lot more. We do have a certain amount of free will. There's this whole debate about predestination and free will gets very sticky, and I'm not going to try to do it in the last 30 seconds of a video. But to a certain extent, we have free will, and we can make ethical decisions and ethical choices. So there's my take on Dogen's take on right view, and I hope that wasn't just a confusing mess. If you want to contribute to me making more confusing messes like this, you can send a donation to the address that you're seeing on your screen below. That is how I make my living. That's how I make all of this stuff happen, and I really, really appreciate those of you who are contributing. If you are having financial troubles, do not contribute to me. I am not top priority for you if you're having financial troubles, but for those of you who aren't and who are still contributing, I thank you very much. Have a good time all the time. See you next time with the next, whatever it's called, the Noble Eightfold Path. Have a good time all the time. I said that already. Bye.